Thank you for your patience. We will now start the web conference. The recording for this webinar will be sent to everyone via email next week. You can write your questions in the box on the left-hand side of your screen, and I will now hand it over to Mr. Stanley.
Welcome to Creating an Innovation Center of Excellence. Let me start first with a story about how innovation got started in one organization. It was January 2009. U.S. Airways Flight 1549 had just taken off from New York's LaGuardia Airport. But soon after, its engine stopped when the plane hit a flock of Canada geese. The plane crashed into the icy cold Hudson River in New York City shortly after takeoff. The floats and rafts deployed. Local ferry boats quickly rushed to the scene to take all passengers and crew on board from these deployed slides and rafts, saving them from freezing as the plane began to sink. But what the papers didn't mention is that these slides and rafts were made by Zodiac Aerospace Evacuation Systems. They develop and install these floats and rafts for the major airlines around the world. They are a humble company and didn't seek any congratulations because their product did what they expected it to do. But shortly thereafter, they were given a challenge, something they found very difficult to manage. They were asked to develop slides and rafts for the Boeing 787 Dreamliner. These will, of course, be larger and stronger than anything they'd ever made before. But the real challenge, they have to weigh less and less than their current smaller versions. This required a different type of thinking, a more innovative way. Now, generally, they tended to follow an ad hoc approach to innovation. Seems to be indicative of so many organizations, but they lack the culture and process for consistent, ongoing innovation. They needed an innovation center of excellence. Now, the director of quality brought us in. We worked with their leadership team to develop the culture and process for innovation. And I will share with you what we did, how we did it, and more importantly, the insights we learned from this organization and others to illustrate the critical importance for innovation to be successful, and why you need a clear vision, strategy, and process for innovation. In combination, it becomes an innovation center of excellence. So there are 5 things that you need to know, because an innovation center of excellence is a business unit that reaches throughout the organization. When I review an organization's approach to innovation, how do I know it's a center of excellence? 5 key areas start with committee. Individuals who are responsible for overseeing innovation within the organization. They have a clear vision. They know why innovation at this particular time. And they have strategies identifying how they will reach their vision. And their employees, well, they will understand innovation, and the culture will be reshaped to be more supportive of consistency in the use of innovative practices. And they have moved beyond the ad hoc into a consistent process for managing innovations. But unfortunately, our global experience with a variety of types of private and public companies indicates that most organizations speak well about innovation, but they lack these critical elements required to say they truly have an innovation center of excellence. Before I get you into how do we do each of these 5 areas, let me share with you another story. There I was at this major corporate event for a large global company. All of the media had been invited for this special event. Chief executive came on stage. He described his well-thought-out, incredibly detailed vision for changing his organization. Innovation will be the cornerstone on which we build our future, he said. For too long, we have relied on our great brand, loyal customers, and dedicated employees to carry us through various difficult times. The world is changing, and our customers and shareholders are counting on us to deliver new products and services. Our competitors haven't recognized this fact. This gives us an edge. So from this day forward, I commit to create a culture of innovation. We will be known as the company that reinvented our industry. Well, there was huge applause. Then, in the organization, they put up a huge plaque in the corporate lobby, and that boldly claimed core value for this organization. Number one will be innovation. You could tell that the CEO believed this with all his heart. He had seen the light, and there was a renewed optimism among all levels of employees. Everyone in that meeting got a T-shirt, and on each T-shirt it said that the core value number one will be innovation. And then something unfortunate happened. You see, after that, nothing happened. Nothing happened at all. In our experience, it's good to have a vision, to know what it is that you want to do, but the missing link is they never created an innovation center of excellence. They really never thought about how do we implement, how do we actually do that. A little bit of research before we get into those 5 things. In Canada, a survey of Corporate Canada's innovation practices was released in February of 2013 by the Conference Board of Canada. In it, the Vice President, Michael Bloom, said of the 450 organizations, the results, well, they suggest pretty strongly that it's worth managing innovation. We get more bang for your buck. We know this. Yet nearly half of these 450 organizations acknowledged they had no formal innovation management process. They found that organizations that spend lots of time on innovation but don't manage it properly actually do worse on average than those who spend less. And that is very true of the last story I presented to you. On the other hand, organizations with well-defined innovation policies and practices show higher long-term growth in revenue, profits, and company worth. Well, that research study went a little further, and what's interesting is that this isn't unique at all to Canada and our experience. This is so indicative of countries around the world that we have worked with. What they found is many organizations found that because of a lack of funds, they didn't engage in innovation. But innovation does not require money in order to get started. It is the use of funds that may help them to launch innovations once developed, but not in the beginning size. Organizations can be as small in sometimes 7 people and as large as many hundreds of employees. It makes no difference. Innovation is applicable to all sizes of organizations. Some felt the nature of their industry. When we think of innovation, we think of technology, the development of electricity, the mobile, internet, and so on. And it's true, innovation led to all of these great technologies. But innovation is about services and products and structures. It's about retail, government, pharmaceutical companies. It spans everything. Fear of risk. You know, organizations that are highly innovative often cite that they are willing to take calculated risks. So never fear risk. It's a part of innovation. Technological difficulties. Technology is not critical in the field of innovation. Absolutely. There are many innovations that are driven because of technology, but not all. And the corporate culture. So I will explain to you steps involved to reshape the culture, to be more focused on innovation. Low-cost competition. I think the greatest example is Walmart. And they said, no. What we will do is maintain our low-cost competition by using innovation to maintain our competitive advantage. Always look at that as an opportunity, not as a risk. The inability to implement ideas, I will explain to you how to create a process that will ensure that all employees are willing and able to implement new ideas to help generate new innovations. And regulations, many industries have to work within the constraints of certain regulations. That does not constrain innovation, for innovation can always be created within a framework, within whatever those parameters are. A poor business climate. To me, this is a challenge, an opportunity to see with that climate, what can we do in order to be more innovative? So as I mentioned earlier, this research, well, it parallels similar research completed in other organizations, not at all unique to just Canada. So I told you there were 5 things that you needed to know, and the first thing is to create an innovation committee. Now, in creating an innovation committee, the innovation committee will oversee the entire journey. They will become the Innovation Center of Excellence Committee. Their members, well, they will consist of a mix of management and staff from different departments and locations within the organization. Generally, the team should consist of no more than 8. Otherwise, decision-making is difficult. Members are sometimes pre-selected by management, or they ask for volunteers, or use a combination of both approaches. There are strengths and weaknesses between both. It doesn't really matter. The most important thing is get this committee together. Now, the chair of the committee will be selected either by the leadership team or by the committee. They are not a decision maker. They are responsible for ensuring the meetings are scheduled, their process is clear, they have regular reporting to the leadership team, and communication to all employees. Now, the sponsor of this Center of Excellence can be either a member of the leadership team, and sometimes it could be the entire leadership team. It depends upon the size of the organization and how many individuals are part of the leadership team. But the Innovation Committee is ongoing. They have no mandated end date, and this ensures innovation is kept alive, because innovation itself has no beginning nor end. It continues on. That's why I always call it a journey. Now, the team members, they are rotated every year. Some members stay on, others come off. This keeps them fresh and engaged. I've seen in some innovation committees where the rotation occurs every 6 months, where half of the team rotates. So half stay on, and then half of them come off, and it ensures that they stay fresh with new ideas. Now, this innovation committee, they're going to identify the current state of innovation within the organization, and sometimes they decide to just start it within a department if the organization is very large, or a region, or a location, or a plant, whatever. But in identifying the current state of innovation, they're just trying to find out, is innovation happening anywhere? To what extent is it occurring? So they'll do it through surveys, research, focus groups, and so on. And then they'll identify the receptiveness to change. I'm going to discuss this more when we get into how to reshape the culture to be more innovative. But we're just trying to identify, if this organization is a little risk-averse, not very adaptive to change, that's okay. We can identify strategies to help overcome that and to create new opportunities to become more receptive to change. And then it's very important the committee benchmark. They benchmark against other organizations to find out how did they structure innovation? What is their innovation process? What was the mandate for their Innovation Center of Excellence, and so on. This just helps when they create their overall vision and strategies for innovation. Now, the very first meeting of this Innovation Center of Excellence Committee, they will define the roles and responsibilities. So, for example, what are the key responsibilities of the chair, of the individual responsible for taking notes, of the communicator within the team, and so on. And then they will identify rules. What are the rules to manage their ongoing performance? The parameters that will keep them on track and in focus every time they come together in their meetings. For example, decision-making. Will they make decisions by consensus or by majority? My preference, of course, is very much to make decisions by consensus because I don't like to see anything that might split a team. Then they will define their purpose, their mandate of the committee, which of course is to oversee the innovation journey, but they need to kind of discuss it, describe it, and record it. And how will they measure their success? The success of this innovation committee, as well as innovation within the organization or the department. And then they'll talk about how will we launch this change initiative. Will we do it through a newsletter, emails, or hold a town hall meeting? In one organization, for example, I worked with, they decided to launch it by holding a town hall meeting for all employees. Now, they didn't really know what to call this innovation initiative, so they brought in a big cake with Project X written on it. The room had posters around saying Project X. There was a lot of discussion and all kinds of back and forth communication in the room. Then the president stood up and explained what they had done so far, that they had created this Innovation Center of Excellence Committee, whose purpose was to oversee a journey in innovation. He introduced the committee members. The committee chair then got up and explained their mandate and how they will measure success. He advised that there will be regular communication and updates. But their very first request was, let's name this particular initiative. We don't want to just call it Project X. So afterwards, everyone submitted names. And the name that got chosen was actually Project Tiger. And Tiger, they said, was because it stood for training, for integration of all processes, for growing in the division, experts in our field, and results-oriented. A tree was created and small tigers were put at its base. The branches represented strategies they'll develop, and the tigers will walk up the tree towards each one so they can measure progress. They put this in their lobby. Of course, they had locations throughout the world, and they would always be taking pictures of this tree showing the tigers, walking up the tree to each one of the strategies, and they would include that in their newsletter. So I told you there were 5 things you need to know. So the first, of course, to set up your committee for your Center of Excellence. Now we're ready to determine how do we create our vision for innovation. Now, creating your vision, first discuss amongst your innovation committee, why do we want to do innovation now? What's the driver? What are the expected results? And then we do a little bit of research. Strategically, has innovation been defined? Did the senior leadership team develop as a part of their strategic plan, if they do have one, that innovation is very much a part of it? What Zodiac Aerospace Evacuation Systems, which I had mentioned at the very beginning of this webinar, realized that although they had started their innovation journey, the leadership team didn't have innovation as one of their core strategies. So we worked with them to create a strategic plan. And then innovation was included as one of the organization's core strategies. This gave it the critical importance that it required. Then as a committee, you will define innovation, because innovation means different things to each organization. What does it mean to your organization or to your department? And then, how are you going to describe it to your employees? How do we define it in a way that's meaningful to all employees? In creating the overall vision, what I often have them do is just brainstorm. Okay, what's the future going to look like? And I often have them create scenarios to describe the organization or the department 5 years into the future. What does it look like? How did we get there? What kinds of things are happening now that the organization is much more innovative? Very important to go 5 years into the future. For in my experience, if you don't go far enough into the future, then you tend to create scenarios of the future that are more rooted in what you know about today, and I need to get you very much out of it. In creating these scenarios, have no concerns regarding your current structures, processes, and culture. The focus is on the ideal future, and all of these things might be very different in your description of the future 5 years forward. And then you'll create a future that reflects all of the ideal possibilities. Burt Rutan, an American aerospace engineer, he said, set a really difficult goal to describe a future that may be quite challenging to realize. Half of your innovation committee should think that it's impossible, because then probably that's the one that you should be working towards. That is when true innovation will start to occur. So Zodiac Aerospace Evacuation Systems, once they identified innovation as a core strategy and they developed their overall vision, they created a vision statement for innovation to share with all employees. To use creative thinking and unique ideas in fundamentally different ways to create tomorrow's opportunities. Then they decided, as part of the employee communication, to better identify why innovation. They wanted to create statements that the employees could review to clarify why innovation at this time. And so this included to go from incremental to breakthrough improvements, to create the next generation products, to remain the leader in our field, to control our future, and to gain competitive advantages. Now that's private sector, just to give you a contrast, a public sector organization. The province of Newfoundland Labrador in Canada, the Forest Services branch, now they recognize that in their past 100 years they were very successful, but the entire forestry industry was changing dramatically. And they started to feel that their very jobs were suddenly at risk and their whole purpose. So they realized that they had to create a center of excellence for innovation, become more innovative. And so they created a vision to be revitalized in a manner that inspires hope and evolution in order to propel innovative opportunities for growth, prosperity, and sustainability. So create your committee, develop your vision, and now we're ready. What are the strategies that will enable us, our Center of Excellence Innovation Committee, to realize the vision? In developing your strategies, you'll find that what they will do is translate that vision you created into reality. How are we going to implement it? We may not be able to realize all of it. It was 5 years into the future, and a lot of it was a bit of a dream. But it will close the gap between where you are now and that future you would like to work towards. It's going to become the guide for your entire innovation journey. But it's very important that these strategies be described, understood, and accepted by all the Innovation Committee members. If you don't all agree with them, then it'll be very difficult to be successful in realizing them. Scott Cook, he's Intuit's founder, and Intuit is best known for accounting software. Quicken is perhaps the one best known that they developed. He said that senior leaders must encourage and create a safe innovation space in order for tomorrow's decision makers to carry this imaginative spirit throughout the lifetime of the company. But do recognize, if we wait for all the senior leaders to actually say, I think you should do this, it'll never happen. A grassroots, bottom-line approach is often very common, where we decide in smaller groups, smaller sections within our organization to demonstrate how, by focusing more on innovation, we can clearly show more success. And then all of a sudden the senior leaders will sit up, pay attention, and say, I really like what I see. And you'll find that they will then be much more encouraging and create that safe innovation space. Now, in developing your strategies, Dr. Edwards Deming, he said that nobody forces a company to become innovative. It's converting the desire into action. It requires an intentional initiative, systematically planned and organized like any other important management activity. Creating a center of excellence requires some action, but it's got to be very intentional, and you will find it to be brilliantly successful. So organizations that created their vision, examples of strategies that they then developed to support the vision. So Zodiac Aerospace Evacuation Systems, one of their strategies was to create an environment that encourages and fosters creative thinking across the entire workforce in all facilities and business units in order to create breakthrough technologies. And Apple had one to build products that are cool, intuitive, simple to use, and to provide the most amazing experience. So Zodiac's is focused very much on reshaping their culture to be more innovative. Apple's is very much focused on products. So a couple of others to improve the quality of life in the organization in order to attract people who will continue to foster a culture of innovation for our organization. So this strategy is focused on all of the hiring, the recruitment, and the training practices for employees. To assess, measure, and adjust continuously in order to strengthen our innovation processes and to measure success. And so now this focus is on the innovation process itself. So you will develop a number of strategies. They must be measurable. And then they are followed with a series of objectives that identify exactly how you will execute each of these and within what time frame. The objectives clarify what you're going to be able to do in your first year and in your second year. It's very difficult to develop strategies that go out any further than that. And then they will be followed by a series of actions. So it's clear what are you going to do this month, next month, and you'll find implementation of the strategies then to be quite easy. I told you there were 5 things that you needed to know. The first, create your Center of Excellence for Innovation Committee. Create a vision for innovation and the strategies to ensure the vision will be successfully realized. And now we're ready to talk about culture. Culture for innovation. But you know, the number one obstacle to creating a culture for innovation, it's an unsupportive culture. It is the number one, and I can take it a bit deeper for you. You see, organizations that have a culture of innovation, they're often customer-focused, value-driven, and strategic. They ensure that their operating strategies are developed through interactions with employees, customers, partners, vendors, suppliers, and consultants. They review market trends, and they identify through benchmarking what is required to outperform their competition. So it's very important that we remove these obstacles so that we can have a culture of innovation that is customer-focused, value-driven, and strategic, and so on. And so let me talk to you a little bit about it. A little bit of research by the Harris study. They indicated that what executives saw is that a culture of innovation really was crucial. It was crucial to not only growing their businesses, and 95% indicated that, but profitability, and 94% indicated that, and for attracting and keeping talent, and 86% identified that. We have got to work with the cultures that we currently have, but reshaping it to be more focused on innovation. As you can see, the research indicates is crucial to sustain and to continue to grow. Peter Drucker, he said that company cultures, well, they're like country cultures. Never try to change one. Try instead to work with what you've got. I use the word reshape your culture. You cannot change your culture. Your culture has been embedded in your organization for a long time. Good, bad, or indifferent, that is your culture. But we can work with it, reshape it to be more focused on innovation. John Carter said that anyone in a large organization who thinks major change is impossible should probably get out. Innovation is a journey. It's a major change initiative. It's exciting, it's challenging, it's fun to go through, but it does require at certain junctures some form of major change. So realistically then, there are barriers. There are many barriers to creating a culture of innovation. Research has indicated a lack of leadership support as being one of them. It's very important as an innovation center of excellence that you have clear sponsorship. Some member, hopefully, of the management team, the leadership team, and that you can at least gain their support. By gaining their support, you're going to find your journey that much easier. They're going to want to know what's your vision. What are your strategies? Why innovation at this time? How did you define it? Innovations driven by time and money are also a bit of a barrier. Now, that's absolutely true. There are some innovations that if we don't get it to market within a certain period of time, then we're just going to lose market share and we're going to lose our edge. But most innovations are not and should not be driven by time and money. Some will take a long period of time to fully realize, so don't constrain them. Having no strategy for innovation, it's impossible to reshape your culture if there is no strategy. So when you create your vision, you've got to develop those strategies and how you will successfully ensure your vision will be realized. And an absence of culture which supports innovation, one of your strategies must focus on what you'll do to help to reshape the culture. It's not going to happen, in a month or two. It will take a longer period of time. But slowly you will be working on the reshaping of the culture. Some research from McKinsey, they said leading companies for innovation make innovation a formal agenda item at regular leadership meetings because this signals to employees the value management attaches to innovation. So how many of you who are in a management position have seen innovation as an agenda item at your management meetings? How many of you have seen management updates on the implementation of innovation strategies? Part of the reshaping of your culture is by bringing to leadership and management meetings a discussion around innovation as one of their topics included in their agendas, at least on a monthly basis. Daniel Music, professor of entrepreneurship and dean of the Sauder School of Business, he added this to innovation cultural barriers. It is a constant examination of quarter-by-quarter results versus longer-term planning that creates a culture that is not supportive of innovation. There's too much focus in private companies. How do we do this month? How do we do in sales? Are things going up? It's too short-term. Innovation requires much longer-term planning and thinking. It's very difficult for management today to build successful innovation processes. This constant short-term bottom-line oriented pressures combined with the decreasing lifespan of executive teams kind of diminishes the focus on the long-term innovation process and increases the focus on sustaining existing products. That's a dangerous move in volatile markets. To move outside this realm, organizations must evaluate the extent to which adding new products and services is included in the measurement of management's performance. So identify how much time is spent in management meetings, as I mentioned, on innovation versus general business. Are staff given the time and resources to experiment, generate ideas, explore these, and make presentations to management? Or is it just done on an ad hoc, more haphazard basis? So then how do we reshape our culture for innovation? Well, the first is use your innovation committee. Now, sometimes what I've seen is they create a subcommittee of them, where one member of the Center of Excellence Committee will chair that particular committee. And this, either the innovation committee itself or the subcommittee, will review how innovation was defined by the Center of Excellence, what the overall vision was as well. Then they will have all employees throughout the organization or department complete an innovation cultural assessment. And this identifies the current culture for innovation within your organization, and then it can be compared to the ideal culture as identified through your vision. So we often use an innovation cultural assessment. It's online assessment. It gives you the report, the recommendations, and helps you to figure out where it is and where you would like it to be. And from that, it's easy then to identify the actions to close the gap between the present and the ideal innovation culture. Now, these might include training, communication, recognition, culture, and so on. Now, these generally don't generate additional strategies. Though it's possible. Generally, they identify additional objectives and actions to be added to your strategies to ensure you have the actions required to reshape your culture to be more innovative. So I told you that there were 5 things that you needed to know to create your committee for your Center of Excellence, define your vision for innovation, to develop the strategies required to close the gap between where you are and where you would like to be according to your vision, to reshape your culture to be more focused on innovation. And now we're ready to talk a little bit about the process of innovation itself. So where does innovation start? Well, it's wherever employees confront problems, deal with unforeseen contingencies, or work their way around breakdowns in normal procedures. Because the problem is this: few organizations know how to learn from this local innovation and how to use it to improve their overall effectiveness. So the Innovation Center of Excellence is the center to kind of use and understand the breakthroughs that are necessary to ensure there is increased effectiveness. So we want to foster innovation. Booz Allen Hamilton, in a recent study, they said one characteristic of innovation is that successful innovators had a rigorous process for managing innovation. Disciplined, stage-by-stage approval process combined with regular measurements of every critical factor, from time and money spent to the success of new products and services in the market. All too often, when we think of innovation, we just think of some lone inventor kind of hiding away in dark little corner, coming up with the next great idea and so on. Innovation isn't about that at all. It is a process. There are a number of steps involved, stage gate approvals that are required, and so on. There is a structure, but it's not heavily structured. More, it gives a framework to ensure they can move successfully through it. But many people say, but I'm not creative, so I don't really have ideas. How do I come up with great ideas? I want to find out how creative all of you are. What I'd like all of you to do right now is take out a sheet of paper. On that sheet of paper, I would like you to draw a big circle on it. Now I'd like you to draw a dot on this sheet of paper. Now this is an exercise that's part of a test given to children entering kindergarten to determine the baseline levels of creativity. A sample on this test includes a big circle pre-drawn on a piece of paper, each child then being asked to draw a dot somewhere on the paper. So let's see how creative each of you are. You put a dot in the very center of the circle. Unfortunately, you're the least creative of the group. Now, for those of you who put a dot at the edge of the circle, well, you'd be considered moderately creative. Now, if you placed the dot outside of the circle, you'd be considered even more creative. Now, if you actually turn the paper over and put the dot on the opposite side of the page, you'd be considered very creative. Don't despair. Some of us definitely are least creative. There is very few, very rare individuals who are very creative. The observation is this. There's a certain amount of creativity inherent in all of us. You notice I didn't say no one is not creative. Everyone has a little bit. Just might take a little bit more work to draw it out. Peter Lyman, Wharton finance professor, he said, look, there's no magic aha moment in most innovation. If you wait for eureka, you'll never have innovation. Harris study, when it came to the importance of a process for innovation and a team to work through the process, 47% of executives reported their organization has no team, process, or system for vetting new ideas in order to decide which ones to invest in. So it's no wonder they're not successful. You must have an innovation team and a process to put it all the way through. You know, the lone inventor, the myth. During the life of Thomas Edison, he patented 1,093 inventions. However, he didn't work alone. No, it's a bit of a misconception. His team of talented workers, I'm showing you here, assisted him all hours of the day and night because they had the skills to take his ideas through an innovation process to bring them to reality. His laboratory at Menlo Park was often referred to as an invention factory. Now, how can we foster more ideas amongst all employees? We do need a little bit of support from management. What management should do is just go around, have conversations with employees, and just ask them, what are you working on? What are the potentials? What are the future applications? What are your challenges? How might people use it? How can I help? They then become actively involved rather than asking the traditional questions such as, oh, when's it going to be finished? And why is it taking so long? And how much money is going to be required? You know, within the innovation process, there are opportunities when these questions are appropriate, but not on an ongoing basis. This represents the kind of short-term thinking I discussed earlier. If management asks these types of questions, it fosters more creativity. Stephanie Kovaluk, a chemist, she invented Kevlar. She said that a large part of innovation is welcoming difference. You have to be open to the unusual and understand that difference is often positive, not negative. A lot of people see something unusual and assume that it's wrong. Innovation is the ability to see something unusual and recognize that the answer may lie in its difference. Innovation requires a team of individuals. Some of them may have subject matter expertise on that particular innovation they're working on, and others may have very little. We want to welcome the difference, the people that don't have much knowledge. They'll be great. They're going to ask the why questions. Why would we do this? Why not consider this? And so on. In the creation of teams then for innovation, Madeleine L'Engle, she said, in order to allow ourselves to be creative, we've got to relinquish control and overcome fear. Why? Because real creativity is life-altering. It threatens the status quo. It makes us see things differently. Brings about change, and we're terrified of change. Going through an innovation process, you'll be surprised how easily they'll adapt to the changes that are going to be required. So your committee's responsibility when it comes to generating ideas, capturing them, and creating the innovation teams to go through an innovation process is first, allow all employees to generate ideas by sending to employees questions, concerns, issues, and challenges. For example, send them this question: what do we wish we could do, create, deliver, and so on, that would have a large impact on our organizations, its customers, and employees? Ask them very wide, open-ended questions like that. Just ask them to generate ideas in response to that. Encourage them to capture their ideas. It doesn't matter how they do it. They can use their mobiles, their laptops, paper, Post-it notes. They will create ideas sometimes in the morning, at night, or any time. So don't ask them to just sit in a room to do that. Just ask them to capture them and send them to you, say over a 1 or a 2 week period. Then as an innovation committee, you're going to collect all of these visions and ideas. They're going to be sent into you through all the various, mediums, emails, text, and so on. It doesn't really matter. But you, as a committee, will not eliminate or evaluate any of them. All you will do is consolidate them into groups of similar related ideas. Then you will create innovation teams, and you'll create an innovation team that will take one group of these ideas, and they'll start to move it forward through the innovation team process and so on. And then you'll provide ongoing training, coaching, and support to these innovation teams. Because without training on the innovation process, the teams really aren't going to know what to do with these ideas. For example, we'll work with each team for 2 or 3 days, and by the time they're finished, their innovation will already be largely explored. Your center of excellence. Google Chair said, if you don't try, you don't know. We tried. I and you don't even remember the names of the products that failed. That's the secret of innovation. Not everything's going to be successful, but you will be astounded at how many will be. Create your center of excellence, because this is going to help your organization to realize its innovation strategic imperative. Develop your innovation vision and strategies. Reshape your culture for innovation, for this is going to help your organization to achieve more innovations by creating the culture to support innovative thinking and implement an innovation process. Creating an innovation center of excellence is a wonderful journey. It can seem daunting to know where to begin. However, the most important first step is just that, to take that first step. It's a large and exciting change process. Even a small initiative can help demonstrate the possibilities of a more robust effort. To your organization through this journey. I've led others through this journey, and I know you can too. So I thank you so much for being here as a part of this webinar. My email address is there, and I welcome any questions that you may have on innovation at any time. You don't have to send it to me now. Once you receive a copy of this webinar, feel free to send any of your questions to me at that time as well. Thank you very much.